What you're about to hear is a story that unfolded not in the pages of a thriller, but in the sterile silence of a Santa Clara County courtroom and the cutthroat boardrooms of Silicon Valley. It's a story about a woman who was publicly erased, a wife who during a brutal divorce sat completely silent as her husband stripped her of everything they had built. He called her a simple homemaker and the judge agreed. She walked out with nothing but her name. But what no one in that room knew was that her silence wasn't weakness. It was a strategy, and her name was the only asset she needed. Stay tuned to discover how Anna Vance went from a discarded wife to a billionaire CEO in less than a week. The air in courtroom 12 of the Santa Clara County Superior Court was stale heavy with the unspoken histories of fractured families. It was a cold, impersonal space, all polished wood and muted gray carpeting designed to drain the emotion from life-altering decisions. And on this Tuesday, September 2nd, 2025, it was the stage for the final act of the marriage between Daniel and Anna Sterling. Daniel Sterling sat at the respondents' table looking every bit the titan of industry he was. His suit was a custom-tailored Tom Ford, a dark charcoal that made his silvering temples look distinguished rather than old. He was the founder and CEO of Sterling Industries, a tech manufacturing giant whose components were in nearly every smartphone and electric vehicle on the planet. His lawyer, Marcus Thorne, was a mirror of his client's success, sharp, ruthless, and exuding an almost predatory confidence. They occasionally whispered to each other, a faint smirk playing on Daniel's lips. On the other side sat Anna. She wasn't Anna Sterling anymore, not in spirit. She was Anna Vance, the name she'd brought into the marriage 18 years ago. She wore a simple navy blue dress, her dark hair pulled back in a neat bun. She was still a strikingly beautiful woman at 42, but she seemed to be actively trying to fade into the background. Her posture was perfect. Her hands rested calmly in her lap, but her gaze was fixed on a single insignificant scuff mark on the opposing table. Her lawyer, Sarah Hayes, was the picture of frustration. Sarah was a fighter known for getting her clients their due, but for weeks Anna had given her nothing to fight with. Ms. Vance Sarah had pleaded in their final meeting, "He's offering you a pittance." The house in Los Gatos, which he's claiming is a premarital asset because his parents gave him the down payment and a one-time payout of $500,000. After 18 years of marriage, of supporting his career, of raising your 2 children who are now in college, it's an insult. Anna had simply nodded. "I understand, Sarah." "No, you don't. We can argue your contributions. The late nights you spent helping him draft business plans, the concepts you gave him. There's no paper trail for that." Anna had said, her voice soft but firm. "They were conversations. Ideas on napkins. It's my word against his. Your word is worth something." But Anna had just shaken her head. "Not in this room. Let's just get it over with." Now in the courtroom that moment had arrived. Judge Miller, a woman with a reputation for no-nonsense efficiency, looked over her spectacles at the settlement agreement. "Mr. Thorne," the judge began, her voice echoing slightly in the quiet room, "walk me through the primary asset divisions." Marcus Thorne stood a shark, sensing blood. "Your Honor, it's quite straightforward. My client, Mr. Sterling, is the sole architect of Sterling Industries. The company was founded during the marriage, yes, but its valuation is a direct result of Mr. Sterling's singular genius and relentless effort. Mrs. Sterling, my apologies, Ms. Vance was a homemaker. A wonderful one, to be sure, who raised 2 excellent children. For her non-financial contributions, Mr. Sterling has graciously offered her the family home in Los Gatos, fully paid off, and a lump sum alimony payment of $500,000. He will also, of course, continue to cover all educational and living expenses for their children." Sarah Hayes stood her jaw tight. "Your Honor, we object to the characterization of my client's contributions as purely non-financial. Ms. Vance was an integral part of the genesis of Sterling Industries." Judge Miller looked at Anna. "Ms. Vance, Do you have anything to add to your counsel's statement? This was it. The moment for Anna to speak her truth, to fight for a share of the $4.8 billion empire she had helped build from the ground up. The room was silent. Sarah Hayes held her breath, giving her client a pleading look. Daniel watched a flicker of something. Was it anxiety in his eyes? Anna took a slow, deliberate breath. Her eyes moved from the scuff mark to the judge. For a heartbeat, the world seemed to hang in the balance. Then she spoke, her voice clear and devoid of emotion. No, Your Honor, I have nothing to add. A collective exhale seemed to ripple through the room. Sarah Hayes's shoulders slumped in defeat. Marcus Thorne's thin smile widened. Daniel Sterling relaxed back into his chair, the picture of magnanimous victory. He had won. He had erased her from his history, rewriting it to feature only himself. Judge Miller, seeing no contest, stamped the documents with a percussive thud. The court accepts the settlement agreement as presented. The marriage between Daniel Sterling and Anna Vance is hereby dissolved. We are adjourned. The gavel fell. It was over. Daniel stood, buttoning his jacket. He gave Anna a brief, pitying glance, as one might look at a stray animal, before turning to leave with his lawyer, already discussing a celebratory dinner at the French Laundry. He didn't offer to shake her hand. He didn't say goodbye. Sarah Hayes began packing her briefcase, her movements sharp with anger. Anna, I don't understand. You just let him walk away with billions. He just painted you as a glorified nanny, and you said nothing. Anna finally stood, her composure uncracked. She looked at her lawyer, and for the first time that day a glimmer of something other than resignation appeared in her eyes. It wasn't sadness. It was something sharper, clearer. It was focus. Sarah, she said, her voice still quiet but now laced with steel. I didn't need the money. I just needed my name back. She picked up her simple leather handbag, turned, and walked out of the courtroom. She didn't look back. She left behind the life of Mrs. Sterling, the sprawling mansion, the social galas, the shared history. She walked out into the bright California sunshine with $500,000 a house and her maiden name. To Daniel, to the lawyers, to the world, she was a woman who had been utterly defeated, a fool who had quietly accepted her own erasure. They were all wrong. This wasn't an ending. It was a countdown, and the clock had just started ticking. To understand Anna's silence in that courtroom, you have to go back 18 years to a cramped Palo Alto apartment that always smelled of coffee and solder. Daniel was brilliant, no one could deny that. He had a Ph.D. in electrical engineering from Stanford, and a relentless ambition that burned like a furnace. But Daniel was a sprinter, not a marathon runner. He had explosive ideas that would fizzle out, lacking the foundational structure to become viable. Anna, with her dual degrees in physics and economics from MIT, was the opposite. She was the architect. She saw the entire system, the framework, the market viability, the long-term potential. When they met, she was working at a venture capital firm, analyzing the very kind of tech startups Daniel dreamed of launching. She saw the raw, unrefined genius in him, and he was captivated by her sharp, organized mind. Their courtship was a whirlwind of whiteboards and late-night brainstorming sessions. Sterling Industries wasn't born in a garage, as the company lore claimed. It was born on 1,000 dinner napkins in their tiny apartment. Daniel would pace, throwing out wild concepts for semiconductor efficiency. Anna, curled up on their worn-out sofa, would listen patiently before taking a pen and sketching out the supply chain, the patent strategy, the 3-year financial model. The core breakthrough that became the foundation of Sterling Industries, a novel method for layering silicon wafers that drastically reduced heat and increased processing speed, was Anna's. She'd been inspired by an article on biomimicry on the layered structure of butterfly wings. One night she'd sketched the concept on a placemat while they waited for pizza. Look, she'd said, her eyes alight with discovery. What if we stop thinking about stacking them like pancakes and start thinking about layering them like scales, interlocking with microchannels for heat dissipation? Daniel had stared at the drawing. At first he'd dismissed it. Too complex. The manufacturing would be a nightmare, but Anna had already thought of that. Not with plasma etching. If we modify the existing Crawford method. She talked for an hour straight. Daniel listened, his initial skepticism melting away into a dawning realization. This wasn't just an idea, it was a revolution. He took the placemat, and the next day he started working on a prototype in the university lab. He never mentioned her name. When he filed the initial patent, the inventor listed was Daniel Sterling. "It's just cleaner this way, honey," he'd explained when she gently questioned it. "I'm the face of the tech. You're the business brain. We're a team. The paperwork is just a formality." Young and in love, she believed him. For the first decade, they were that team. Daniel was the charismatic frontman, the Steve Jobs figure who dazzled investors and the press. Anna was the unseen force, the Tim Cook of the operation, managing strategy, logistics, and finance from their home office. She drafted the proposals that secured their Series A funding from Sequoia Capital. She negotiated the contracts with their first major clients. She raised their 2 children, Michael and Chloe, while running a multi-million-dollar company's back end from a laptop at the Kit Hayes table. Her name wasn't on the letterhead. She had no official title. She took no salary, pouring everything back into the company. It was all the family's, Daniel always said. Our shared future. The shift was gradual, insidious. As the company grew into a billion-dollar behemoth, Daniel's public persona began to merge with his private one. He started to believe his own press. He was the singular genius. The ideas he'd once brainstormed with Anna became anecdotes of his own solitary inspiration. The napkin sketch became a story of a vision he had in a dream. He began to patronize her. "Honey, leave the business to me. You've got the kids and the house to worry about." He hired a massive executive team populating the C-suite with people who only knew Anna as the boss's wife. Her strategic input was no longer sought. It was tolerated, then ignored. The final brutal cut came 3 years before the divorce. Anna had been working for months on a new project codenamed Aethelgard. It was a radical leap forward, a new type of biodegradable self-repairing circuitry based on mycelial networks. It was her magnum opus, a project that would make Sterling Industries a leader not just in speed, but in sustainability. It was the future. She presented the completed proposal to Daniel in his vast minimalist home office, the same office where she was no longer welcome without an appointment. He skimmed the 80-page document, his expression unreadable. "This is ambitious, Anna," he said, the word a dismissive pat on the head. "Very creative. But our shareholders want predictable profits, not some sci-fi experiment with mushrooms." "Daniel, this could change everything," she pleaded. "It's a whole new market. It's the right thing to do for the planet." He closed the binder and pushed it back across the desk. "I'll take it under advisement. Now, if you don't mind, I have a call with the board. And by the way, Chloe has a gala on Friday. I need you to make sure my tux is back from the dry cleaners." Chloe was the final component of Anna's erasure. Chloe Astor, the 20-something daughter of a New York real estate mogul, a fixture on the socialite scene with an Instagram following in the millions. Anna first saw them together in a picture from a charity event in Vanity Fair. Daniel's arm was around Chloe's waist, his smile more genuine than any she'd seen directed at her in years. When she confronted him, he didn't even have the decency to lie. "Anna, we've grown apart. It happens. My life is, different now. I need someone who understands that world. The world I helped you build," she asked, her voice cracking. "Don't be dramatic," he'd scoffed. "You took care of the house. I built an empire. It's not the same thing." That was the moment the love died. It wasn't a quiet fading. It was a sudden, violent extinguishment. In its place, something cold and hard and clear took root. He had not just taken credit for her work. He had used it to build a pedestal from which he looked down on her. He had stolen her past and her present. She decided in that instant that he would not have her future. For the next 2 years, while the marriage crumbled around them, Anna played the part of the heartbroken, fading wife. But at night, after Daniel was asleep or away on business, She was in the guest house she had converted into a private lab. She took her Aethelgard proposal, the one he had dismissed, and began to work. She called in favors from old MIT professors, consulted with mycologists and materials scientists under strict NDAs, and bootstrapped the research with a personal investment account she'd started with a small inheritance from her grandmother years ago. She learned that Daniel's lawyers would use her lack of an official title or salary to argue she was owed nothing but standard alimony. She knew any claim she made about her contributions would be dismissed as the bitter rantings of a scorned wife. Proving her intellectual contributions to Sterling Industries would be a long, ugly, and likely fruitless battle. So she chose a different path. She would not fight for his past. She would build her own future. Her silence in court wasn't an admission of defeat. It was a strategic masterstroke. By accepting the insulting offer, she avoided a protracted, messy legal war that would have put her Aethelgard project under a microscope. Daniel, blinded by his arrogance, wanted a quick, clean victory. He wanted to humiliate her quietly and get her out of his life. Anna gave him exactly what he thought he wanted. She let him erase her from Sterling Industries. She let him cast her as the simple homemaker. Because while he was busy rewriting history, she was busy writing the future, and he had no idea that the sci-fi experiment with mushrooms he had casually dismissed was about to make his entire empire look like a relic from the Stone Age. The Los Gatos house was beautiful, a sprawling 6,000-square-foot Spanish-style villa, nestled in the hills with an infinity pool and a view that stretched to the shimmering skyline of San Jose. To Daniel, leaving it to Anna was a grand gesture of his generosity, a golden cage for the pretty bird he no longer wanted. He never imagined she would see it not as a home but as a headquarters. The day after the divorce was finalized, Anna didn't mourn. She went to work. The movers Daniel had sent to pack her things were redirected. Instead of boxes of memories, they were instructed to carefully move lab equipment out of the guest house and into the cavernous, climate-controlled 4-car garage. This was the nerve center of her secret life. For 2 years, this space had been her sanctuary and her crucible. While Daniel was being photographed on yachts with Chloe, Anna was hunched over a scanning electron microscope. While he was giving keynote speeches at Davos, she was running simulations on a supercomputer she had built herself from salvaged parts and liquid cooling rigs. Her partner in this clandestine venture was Dr. Eris Thorne, a retired eccentric genius who had been her favorite professor at MIT. Eris was a legend in materials science, a man who had turned down fortunes from corporations like Dow and 3M to pursue his own esoteric research. When Anna had first called him 2 years ago with her wild idea about mycelial circuitry, he hadn't laughed. He'd flown out to California the next day. "They're the planet's neural network." Anna, he'd set his eyes wide with excitement as he examined her initial prototypes. "Nature's perfect information superhighway. If we can harness it, control its growth into conductive pathways. It's not just biodegradable, it's generative, a circuit that can heal itself. It's the Holy Grail." The technology they developed was breathtaking in its elegance and complexity. They named it Heliosynth. It wasn't just a circuit, it was a symbiotic organism. A thin, flexible substrate was seeded with a genetically engineered strain of mycelium. When exposed to light and a minimal electric current, the mycelium would grow, forming intricate, hyper-efficient conductive pathways. It was a perfect fusion of biology and electronics. The applications were revolutionary. Self-healing electronics. A crack in your phone screen. The mycelial network would simply regrow the connection in a matter of hours. E-waste elimination. When a device reached the end of its life, the substrate could be composted, leaving behind nothing but harmless organic matter. Unprecedented efficiency. The Heliosynth circuits ran cooler and processed data faster than anything Sterling Industries could produce, all while consuming a fraction of the power. It was a world-changing technology incubated in secret, while the world watched Daniel Sterling preen on the cover of Forbes. Anna had financed it all with the $2 million she'd carefully guarded in her personal investment account. She'd liquidated every stock, every bond. By the time of the divorce, she was down to her last $50,000, a terrifying gamble that hinged on her silence in court. The $500,000 settlement wasn't a consolation prize. It was her bridge funding, the final cash infusion she needed to take the next step. On Wednesday, September 3rd, the day after the divorce, her small hand-picked team assembled in the garage. There was Kenji, a young software prodigy who had dropped out of Caltech to work with her, and Dr. Lena Petrova, a biochemist Eris had poached from a rival lab. They were true believers working for deferred stock options and the chance to be part of something monumental. "The settlement is finalized," Anna announced, her voice echoing off the concrete walls. "Phase 1 is complete. We are solvent, we are independent, and our IP is secure." "Kenji, what's the status of the presentation?" Kenji spun around in his chair. "The simulation data is solid. The live demo prototype is stable. The deck is epic." "Lena, the mycelial strains are viable and reproducing at a rate 15% higher than our projections," Dr. Petrova reported, peering through a microscope. "The self-repair algorithm works flawlessly." Anna nodded, a surge of adrenaline cutting through her exhaustion. "Good." "Eris, what about the meeting?" Dr. Thorne, sitting on a stool and sipping tea from a beaker, smiled. "Julian Croft is confirmed. Friday, 10 a.m., his office." The name landed in the room with tangible weight. Julian Croft was not just any venture capitalist. He was the kingmaker of Sand Hill Road, the legendary head of Croft Ventures. He had been an early investor in Google, in Tesla, and Airbnb. Croft didn't just invest in companies, he anointed them. Getting a meeting with him was harder than getting into Harvard. Getting him to invest was like catching lightning in a bottle. "He only gave us 20 minutes, Eris added. He said, and I quote, 'I have no time for mushroom batteries, Eris. Don't waste my time.'" A nervous silence fell over the team. 20 minutes to pitch a technology that would redefine a trillion-dollar industry. "Then we won't waste a single second," Anna said, her voice a calm anchor in the storm of their anxiety. "For the next 48 hours, we live and breathe this pitch. We will be perfect." The next 2 days were a blur of relentless preparation. Anna didn't just want to present data. She wanted to tell a story. She knew Daniel's world intimately. She knew the language of investors, the metrics they craved, the blend of hubris and vision they responded to. But she would do it her way. She wouldn't wear the black turtleneck of a Jobs wannabe or the hoodie of a startup cliché. She would walk in as Anna Vance, the woman no one had ever really seen. On Thursday night, while her team ran final diagnostics, Anna took a rare moment for herself. She walked out to the patio overlooking the valley. The lights of the tech giants, including the gleaming monolithic tower of Sterling Industries, twinkled in the distance. For a moment, a wave of profound sadness washed over her for the lost years, the stolen credit, the man she had once loved. She allowed herself that moment of grief. Then she took a deep breath and let it go. He had taken her past, but in doing so, he had given her a priceless gift, a blank slate. He had underestimated her so completely that he had rendered her invisible. And in the world of high-stakes disruption, invisibility was the ultimate weapon. She looked at the lights of her husband's empire, his empire, built on her foundation. She felt no anger, no desire for revenge, just a cold, clear, unshakable certainty. "Tomorrow," she whispered to the night sky, "I lay my own foundation." The offices of Croft Ventures on Sand Hill Road were an exercise in understated power. No ostentatious logos, just a discreet brass plaque. The interior was a museum of modern art and Scandinavian furniture. It was a place designed to make even the most confident founders feel small a test before the test. Anna Vance walked in at 9:55 a.m. on Friday, September 5th. She wasn't flanked by a team of bankers and lawyers. She was alone, carrying a slim aluminum briefcase. She wore a simple, impeccably tailored gray suit. Her only adornment was a small silver pin in the shape of a branching network on her lapel. She projected an aura of serene, unshakable confidence. She was led to a glass-walled conference room overlooking a manicured Zen garden. Julian Croft was already there. He was in his late 60s with a mane of white hair and piercing blue eyes that seemed to analyze everything with a terrifying speed. He didn't stand. He gestured to the chair opposite him. "Ms. Vance," he said, his voice a gravelly baritone. "Eris Thorne speaks highly of you, which is the only reason you're here. I knew your ex-husband, Daniel Sterling. Brilliant man, cutthroat. You have 20 minutes to prove you're not just another bitter divorcee with a hobby." The insult was deliberate, a needle to test her composure. Anna didn't flinch. She simply placed the briefcase on the table, and met his gaze. "Mr. Croft," she began, her voice calm and measured. "In 18 years, Daniel and I had dinner together 6,570 times. At approximately 4,000 of those dinners, we discussed the future of semiconductor technology. So with all due respect, this is not a hobby. This is my life's work." Croft raised an eyebrow, intrigued by her directness. "Your life's work was Sterling Industries. I read the divorce settlement. You received no equity. The court deemed your contributions non-material." "The court was given incomplete information," Anna replied smoothly. "But I'm not here to talk about the past. I'm here to talk about the future." She opened the briefcase. It didn't contain a laptop. Instead, she took out two objects. The first was a standard smartphone, a top-of-the-line model from a leading brand. The second was a sheet of a translucent, flexible material that looked like a piece of high-tech parchment. It shimmered faintly under the light. "This," she said, tapping the phone, "is the pinnacle of Daniel Sterling's technology. Fast, powerful, and obsolete." She then placed the flexible sheet on the table. "And this is Aethelgard Energy's Prototype 0. It contains the Heliosynth processor." Croft leaned forward, peering at the sheet. "It's a piece of plastic." "It's a living circuit," Anna corrected. She took a small, sharp tool from the case and deliberately sliced a deep gash across the surface of the Heliosynth sheet. An audible hiss could be heard as several of the glowing pathways were severed. "And it's also the most powerful mobile processor ever created." She then turned on the smartphone. "This device has a benchmark score of 1/800 on the standard multi-core performance test. It's the fastest on the market." She then connected a small set of probes from the damaged Heliosynth sheet to a monitor on the conference room wall. She ran the same benchmark test. The numbers on the screen began to climb at a dizzying speed, far surpassing the phone's score. It finally settled at a staggering 400 to 500. Croft's eyes widened slightly. 3 times faster. From a damaged prototype. "That's not the most interesting part," Anna said. She directed his attention to a magnified view of the gash on the monitor. As they watched, tiny, thread-like filaments of light began to grow from the severed ends of the circuits. Slowly, meticulously, they branched out, seeking each other, and reconnected. The benchmark score, which had dipped slightly, ticked back up to its maximum. "My God," Croft breathed. "Self-repairing, in real time. The mycelial network reroutes and rebuilds the damaged pathways," Anna explained. "The processor heals itself. Now imagine this in a data center, a military drone, a deep space satellite. The end of electronic failure. The end of planned obsolescence." She let the statement hang in the air. "And there's more," she continued, pressing her advantage. "What happens to this phone in 5 years? It ends up in a landfill in Ghana, leaching heavy metals into the soil. What happens to my processor?" She picked up a small sealed petri dish from her case. It contained rich, dark soil. "This was a prototype from 6 months ago. We seeded it in this soil. It decomposed completely in 90 days, leaving behind only water, carbon, and a few trace minerals. It's not just a better technology, Mr. Croft. It's an ethical one. It's the end of e-waste." Julian Croft was silent. He stared at the screen, then at the healing sheet of material on his table, then at Anna. He had built his fortune by identifying paradigm shifts before anyone else saw them coming. He recognized the signs. The raw audacity, the elegant solution to an impossible problem, the massive untapped market. This wasn't just an improvement. This was an extinction-level event for the entire existing electronics industry. "Who's on your team?" he asked, his tone shifting from skeptical to serious. "Dr. Eris Thorne leads our materials science division," Anna said. "Dr. Lena Petrova is our chief biochemist. Kenji Tanaka is our head of software architecture. We have a team of 12, all under strict NDA, all with equity, and your manufacturing plan already designed. It's a biofabrication process, more like a brewery than a traditional foundry. It's cheaper, cleaner, and infinitely scalable. We can build a fab for a tenth of what it costs Intel or Sterling to build one." She had an answer for everything: go-to-market strategy, patent fortifications, financial projections. She spoke for another 10 minutes, laying out not just an invention but a fully formed, battle-ready enterprise. When she finished, the 20 minutes were up. Croft leaned back in his chair, tapping a pen on the table. He looked at Anna, truly seeing her for the first time, not as Daniel Sterling's ex-wife, but as a force of nature in her own right. He saw the years of suppressed intellect, the meticulous planning, the unbreakable will. Daniel hadn't divorced a homemaker. He had unleashed a competitor he never knew he had. "Daniel's going to fight you," Croft stated. "He'll claim you stole his intellectual property." "Let him," Anna said, her voice turning to ice. "I have every notebook, every email, every dinner napkin from the last 18 years. If he wants to put our entire history on public record, I will be happy to oblige him. My name is on none of his patents, Mr. Croft. That was his greatest mistake. Legally, I am a clean slate." Croft smiled, a slow, predatory grin. It was the smile that had launched 1,000 unicorns. "Ms. Vance," he said, extending his hand across the table. "You didn't need 20 minutes. You had me at obsolete." He held her gaze. "Croft Ventures will lead your Series A. We'll need to discuss the valuation, of course, but I'm thinking something ambitious. How does a post-money valuation of $2 billion sound as a starting point?" Anna shook his hand. Her grip was firm. She didn't gasp or celebrate. She simply nodded, as if this outcome were the only one she had ever considered. "I believe," she said, a faint, confident smile gracing her lips. "That's a reasonable place to begin." She walked out of the office, leaving Julian Croft staring at the small, self-healing piece of the future on his conference table. The news wouldn't break for a few days after the lawyers had drawn up the term sheet. But the revolution had already begun. The news broke not like a ripple, but like a tsunami. On Tuesday, September 9th, exactly 1 week after the divorce, the Wall Street Journal dropped the bombshell with a headline that sent shockwaves from Silicon Valley to Wall Street. Mysterious startup Aethelgard Energy secures record-breaking $500 million Series A from Croft Ventures, valued at $2.5 billion. At the helm, Anna Vance, ex-wife of tech titan Daniel Sterling. The story was explosive. It had everything: a mystery CEO, a staggering valuation for a company no one had ever heard of, a link to one of the most powerful men in tech, and the delicious dramatic twist of the divorce. The article was sparse on the details of the technology, mentioning only a revolutionary bioelectronic substrate. But the involvement of Julian Croft was all the validation the market needed. Daniel Sterling was in a board meeting at his gleaming headquarters when his chief communications officer burst into the room, phone in hand, his face pale. "Daniel, you need to see this." Daniel, annoyed at the interruption, waved him away. "I'm busy, Mark." "Sir, it's about Anna." The name silenced the room. Daniel snatched the phone. He read the headline. Then he read it again. The color drained from his face. It had to be a mistake. A typo. Anna Aethelgard Energy. He vaguely remembered her babbling about some project with that name. The one with the mushrooms. A $2.5 billion valuation. It was impossible. A joke. He scrolled down, his thumb shaking, and saw the photo accompanying the article. It was a new picture of Anna, professionally taken. She stood in a clean room environment, looking not at the camera but at a glowing wafer in her hand. She looked powerful, confident, visionary. It was a woman he didn't recognize. "Get Julian Croft on the phone." Now he roared, slamming the phone down on the table. His assistant scrambled, but came back moments later looking terrified. "Mr. Croft is unavailable, sir. His office says he's in an all-day planning session with Ms. Vance." The name Ms. Vance was like a slap in the face. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic. The market, smelling blood, reacted instantly. Sterling Industries stock, which had opened strong, began to slide. Then it began to plummet. Why? Because the narrative was irresistible and damning. The story wasn't just that a new competitor had emerged. It was that Daniel Sterling, the supposed visionary, had had the future of technology living under his own roof and had been too arrogant to see it. He hadn't just lost a wife. He had lost the next generation of his own industry. Every investor, every analyst, every journalist was asking the same question. What else did he miss? If he couldn't see the genius he was married to, how could he see the future of technology? His phone began to ring off the hook. Bloomberg, Forbes, CNBC. They all wanted a comment. His mistress Chloe called him, her voice a shrill panic. "Dommy, what is going on? My father just called me. People are saying your ex-wife is the new Elon Musk, the woman who used to arrange your sock drawer." The comparison was salt in the wound. He hung up on her. Enraged and humiliated, Daniel did what he always did. He went on the attack. He instructed his PR team to release a statement. It was a masterclass in hubris and self-destruction. Sterling Industries is aware of the sensationalist reports regarding Ms. Anna Vance. While we wish her well in her new endeavors, we feel it is our duty to inform the public and our shareholders that Ms. Vance has no formal background in technology development or corporate management. Any concepts she may be pursuing were likely absorbed during her 18 years of marriage to our visionary founder, Mr. Sterling. We will be investigating the intellectual property portfolio of Aethelgard Energy to ensure no proprietary information from Sterling Industries has been misappropriated. It was a thinly veiled threat and a public accusation of theft. It was also the biggest mistake of his life. In the temporary offices of Aethelgard Energy, a leased space in Palo Alto they had secured that morning, Anna and her team watched the statement go live on a large monitor. Kenji whistled. He's not just digging a hole. He's hiring an industrial excavation team. Eris Thorne chuckled. The arrogance. It's pathological. Anna remained calm. She turned to Sarah Hayes, her divorce lawyer, whom she had immediately retained as Aethelgard's corporate counsel. Sarah, your thoughts? Sarah, who was still reeling from the week's events, now looked at Anna with something approaching awe. He's handed us a gift. He has publicly accused you of IP theft. That opens the door for us to respond with evidence to the contrary. He's just given you the public platform he denied you in court. Anna nodded. My thoughts exactly. Prepare a press release. No emotion, no insults. Just the facts. State that Aethelgard's technology is entirely novel, developed independently, and that all patents were filed under my name, Anna Vance, after my legal separation. Add that we are confident in our legal position and look forward to focusing on bringing our transformative technology to market. It was a calm, professional, devastatingly effective response. It painted Daniel as a bully, a corporate giant trying to crush a smaller innovator, an innovator who just happened to be his ex-wife whom he had publicly belittled. The narrative flipped. Anna became David and Daniel was a very loud, very clumsy Goliath. That afternoon, Sterling Industries stock closed down 28%. Nearly $1.4 billion in market capitalization had been wiped out in a single day. The headlines were brutal. Sterling shock. Did Daniel Sterling divorce the golden goose? Daniel, locked in his office, was in a full-blown meltdown. He had been publicly humiliated. His reputation as a singular genius was in tatters. He looked at the stock ticker at the sea of red and felt a fury he had never known. He hadn't just been outmaneuvered, he had been made to look like a fool. And the woman responsible was the same one he had dismissed as a simple homemaker just 7 days earlier. The quiet woman who had said nothing in court. He finally understood. Her silence hadn't been her surrender. It had been the loading of the gun. The press release was the first shot. And he had a sinking, terrifying feeling that she had a great deal more ammunition. Daniel Sterling was a man who believed that any problem could be solved with overwhelming force. His response to the Aethelgard crisis was to unleash the full terrifying power of his legal team. He filed a massive lawsuit against Anna Vance and Aethelgard Energy, seeking a temporary injunction to halt their operations and claiming damages of $5 billion, the entire valuation of his company, and then some. The lawsuit's central claim was that the Heliosynth technology was a direct derivative of research codenamed Project Chimera at Sterling Industries. It was a project Daniel had barely glanced at years ago, but his lawyers digging through the archives found it was the closest analog they had a failed attempt at creating organic circuitry. He was suing Anna for stealing an idea he himself had rejected. The legal battle became the most talked-about drama in the tech world. Daniel in his deposition was arrogant and condescending. Anna was my wife, not my colleague, he testified under oath. She had access to my office, my notes. Of course she overheard things. This entire company is built on a half-remembered version of my own discarded genius. His lawyer, Marcus Thorne, presented evidence that Anna had no patents to her name before the divorce, that her name appeared on no Sterling Industries documents. He painted her as a thief who had waited until the marriage was over to monetize stolen secrets. It was a compelling story. For a few weeks, public opinion began to waver. Maybe Daniel was right. Maybe she had played the long game, using the divorce to launch a company with his ideas. Then came Anna's deposition. It was held in a neutral conference room packed with lawyers. Daniel was present, sitting beside Marcus Thorne, watching her with a look of pure loathing. He expected her to be nervous, to crumble under the pressure. Anna walked in, followed by Sarah Hayes. She was, as always, the picture of calm. She took her seat, was sworn in, and waited. Marcus Thorne began the questioning. Ms. Vance, can you tell the court what your official title was at Sterling Industries? I had no official title, Anna answered. And your salary? I did not draw a salary, so you had no formal role. Yet now you claim to be the inventor of a technology vastly more complex than anything Sterling Industries has produced. How do you explain that? Anna looked directly at Marcus, but her words were aimed at Daniel. I am not the inventor of a single technology. I am the inventor of two. The first was the foundational patent for layered silicon wafer architecture, which became the cornerstone of Sterling Industries. A murmur went through the room. Daniel stiffened. Thorne scoffed. A baseless accusation. The patent for that technology lists one inventor, Daniel Sterling. That is correct, Anna said. And I never contested it. But a patent is not the same as a notebook. Sarah Hayes then placed a worn leather-bound journal on the table. We submit as evidence Exhibit A, Ms. Vance's personal research journal dated 2007. She opened it to a specific page. On it, in Anna's neat handwriting, was the original sketch of the layered wafer design. It was dated, annotated, and far more detailed than the initial patent filing. On the bottom of the page was a small coffee-stained note: Daniel thinks manufacturing is an issue, suggesting modified Crawford method. Thorne's face paled. This could be a forgery. Then perhaps you'd like to see Exhibit B. Sarah continued, producing another item. It was a digital audio file, a recording from the night Ms. Vance conceived of the idea. She played the file. It was a low-quality recording from an old microcassette recorder Anna had used to take notes. Her voice was audible, excitedly explaining the concept. Then Daniel's voice could be heard, skeptical at first, then slowly understanding. My God, Anna, you might be right. This could be it. Daniel shot to his feet. This is an illegal recording. It's inadmissible. It was recorded in our own home in a two-party consent state during a conversation to which you were a party, Sarah countered calmly. It is perfectly admissible, and it proves conclusively that the core IP of Sterling Industries originated with my client. The room was in shock. But Anna wasn't finished. "To answer your question, Mr. Thorne," she continued, her voice cutting through the tension, "I explained my ability to create Heliosynth because creating revolutionary technology is what I have always done. The only difference is, this time I signed my own name to the patent." She then addressed the claim about Project Chimera. Sarah produced another piece of evidence, a formal 80-page proposal. "This is the original Aethelgard proposal which I presented to Mr. Sterling 3 years ago," Anna stated. At the front of the room on a large screen, Sarah displayed Daniel's emailed response to the proposal. The date stamp was clear. His words were projected for all to see, ambitious but not viable. "We're shelving this. Let's focus on predictable profits." It was a smoking gun. He had not only seen the idea but had formally rejected it in writing. His lawsuit wasn't just baseless, it was perjury. He had lied under oath claiming the idea was a derivative of his own work when he had documentary evidence that it was hers and that he had dismissed it. The unraveling was swift and brutal. The deposition was leaked to the press. The story was a Hollywood screenwriter's dream. The quiet wife hadn't just been the secret genius. She had the receipts to prove it. The narrative of Daniel as a wronged husband evaporated, replaced by the image of a perjuring thief who had built his empire on his wife's intellect and then tried to sue her when she finally claimed her own genius. The board of Sterling Industries convened an emergency meeting. Faced with shareholder lawsuits, a federal investigation into securities fraud for misleading investors, and a CEO who had committed perjury, they had no choice. 2 days later, Daniel Sterling was fired from the company he had founded. He was forced to resign in disgrace, stripped of his CEO title and his seat on the board. The news hit the wire, and what was left of Sterling's stock value evaporated. The lawsuit against Aethelgard was dropped. Daniel, facing his own legal battles and public ruin, was a broken man. His mistress, Chloe, seeing her ticket to power and prestige go up in flames, left him within the week. He was forced to sell his mansions, his art collection, his private jet, just to pay his lawyers. He had started the week as a king convinced of his invincibility. He ended it as a pariah, a cautionary tale whispered on Wall Street. He had lost his company, his fortune, and his legacy. He hadn't just been defeated, he had been erased. And the architect of his downfall had done it without raising her voice, driven not by revenge, but by the quiet, unstoppable force of truth. 1 year later, in the autumn of 2026, Anna Vance stood on a different kind of stage. It wasn't a courtroom or a boardroom, but the main stage of the TED conference in Vancouver. The room was filled with the brightest minds in the world. Scientists, artists, philanthropists, and thinkers. A massive screen behind her displayed the intricate glowing pathways of a Heliosynth circuit, looking like a captured galaxy. Anna was no longer the invisible woman. She was the most famous CEO in the world. Aethelgard Energy, now valued at over $50 billion, after a wildly successful public offering, was a global phenomenon. Their technology was already being integrated into everything from medical devices to the next generation of electric vehicles. They had broken ground on 3 massive biofabs across the United States, creating thousands of jobs and pioneering a new model of sustainable manufacturing. She had become an icon, but not in the way of the tech bros who had preceded her. She wasn't known for volatile tweets or grandiose promises of colonizing Mars. She was known for her quiet competence, her fierce intellect, and her unwavering ethical compass. She spoke about conscious capitalism and the responsibility of technology to solve problems, not just create profits. "For decades we have operated under a false premise," she said to the captivated audience, her voice resonating with calm authority. "We believed that progress had to come at the cost of our planet, that innovation required exploitation, that a product's end of life was someone else's problem. We have been building our future on a foundation of disposable, toxic debt. Today we offer a different path." She spoke of a future where electronics were grown, not just manufactured, a future without e-waste, a future where technology worked in harmony with nature, not against it. It was a message of hope, backed by a proven revolutionary technology. When she finished, the standing ovation was thunderous and sustained. After the talk, as she walked through the bustling reception, she was approached by a young woman, a student from Stanford. Ms. Vance, the student said, her eyes shining with admiration. "I just wanted to say thank you. I was going to drop out of my engineering program. I was the only woman in most of my classes, and I didn't see a place for myself. Then I read your story. You made me believe my voice mattered." Anna smiled a genuine warm smile. This was the true measure of her success. Not the stock price, not the magazine covers, but this. "Your voice has always mattered," she told the young woman. "You just have to be willing to use it, even if you start by whispering to yourself in a garage." She never spoke publicly about Daniel. She didn't have to. The world had rendered its own verdict. His name had become synonymous with hubris and failure. The last she'd heard, he was living in a modest condo in Arizona facing a mountain of civil lawsuits. Sterling Industries, after a massive restructuring and rebranding, had been acquired by a competitor for pennies on the dollar, its innovations now rendered obsolete by the very technology its founder had dismissed. Later that evening, Anna stood on the balcony of her hotel room looking out at the lights of the city reflecting on the water. Her children Michael and Chloe were joining her for the weekend. They were immensely proud of her, their relationship stronger than ever, rebuilt on a foundation of honesty and her newfound visibility. She didn't feel triumph or the bitter satisfaction of revenge. She felt peace. She had not set out to destroy Daniel. She had only set out to build her own dream. His destruction was a consequence of his own actions, his inability to see beyond his own reflection. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from Julian Croft. It was a link to a news article. Aethelgard Energy had just been awarded a multi-billion-dollar contract to build the processing cores for NASA's new deep space exploration program. Anna looked up at the star-filled sky. She had spent half her life as a ghost, her brilliance confined to the shadows of another's ego. Now her name, Anna Vance, was quite literally reaching for the stars. Her silence in that cold courtroom a year ago seemed a lifetime away. She had learned the most powerful lesson of all. Sometimes the quietest voice can create the loudest revolution. You just have to choose the right moment to speak. Anna Vance's incredible story isn't just about a stunning corporate victory. It's a powerful testament to the hidden strength in all of us. It shows that being underestimated can be your greatest weapon. And that true power isn't about being the loudest person in the room, but about having the patience and brilliance to make your move when it counts the most. Her journey from a silent ex-wife to a global innovator reminds us that our value is never determined by someone else's opinion or a legal document, but by our own vision and resilience. What did you find most inspiring or shocking about Anna's story? Let us know in the comments below. We read every single one. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and make sure you subscribe to our channel for more true stories of incredible triumphs. Click the notification bell so you never miss an update. Thanks for listening.